Hey, and welcome back to another Twinmotion video. In this one, we're looking at another path tool, specifically the custom path tool. Before, in other videos that I've done, and I'd recommend you check those out first, we have looked at a bicycle path, a character path, and a vehicle path. And we can see all those here that we have loaded into my scene still. I've got the vehicle path, which is complete absurdity, but nonetheless, that's the vehicle path. The character path, we've got some characters that walk in and outside of this building and circulate around. And then finally the bicycle path, where we've got some bicycles traveling on this path. We're not working on any of those, but today we are going to look at the custom path. And before we get into it, if at any point in this video you do happen to learn something or you just end up liking it, if you wouldn't mind, please demolishing that like button. It really helps me out a lot. Let's get into this now. We're looking at the custom path tool, and you'll find the custom path tool in paths here. We've got context, paths, we've got again the character, vehicle, bicycle, and then finally the custom path. And so if you've watched the previous videos, it is pretty simple, but it starts with using a pen tool that you're probably used to seeing, and it works kind of the same as in other programs. We're going to click the pen tool, and at this point we now get to start adding points. And it's really all about where we want this path to be. So you might wonder what is on this path or what will be following this path by default. Well, technically it's nothing because it's custom, and at that point we have the option of making anything follow the path. But I'm not going to do anything fancy, but just have this path show up throughout the site here and maybe come back around so we can continuously look at this path. So we've got the path here, and so by default it looks like it's just a box. It's just one of the primitive objects. So if I come over here and I go back out all the way, you can see that we've got objects and then primitives, and these are all the primitive objects, and it's likely that one of these, it's probably the cube that will start. But I want to first start with the object before we move into the other settings. So right now, again, default is this box, and it is as simple as taking absolutely any object in all of Twinmotion, which does include anything that you've loaded in or added yourself, and then just simply dragging it there. Now, if this will be closed by default, but I can choose the three dots up here. It's very small to see, but the three dots above this object, and it just says go to library, and this will just pull out my library of all my objects. And so this is really nice because I can simply drag and drop any other object here. You can see that's ridiculous, but I can drag and drop any object here and it will begin to follow this path as I have drawn it. And again, like I said, this works on absolutely anything, and it could be something as stupid as this, and I know this is absolutely stupid and you would never see such a thing in the real world, and if you did, I hope you'd wake up from your dream. But the fact that we have a toilet following this path is ridiculous, but just goes to show you that absolutely anything can be used to follow this path. And I think this is completely awesome because you might have random objects that you want to follow a path for some reason. And there's more than just that. I mean, you can look at any one of these objects, and like some of these construction objects are just ridiculous and absurd and giant, and having this thing follow a path is stupid. But I'm doing this to show that you can get absolutely anything to work, and it just works. It's really nice. So let's step beyond this, and I'll go ahead and put it back on something. Let's call it something generic. Well, actually, before that, we've got, again, everything will follow the path, which does actually include these water cubes and whatever, but something pretty cool that I found is actually the particles. So you've got fires and fog and smokes and whatever, but it's pretty sweet what it does with particles. So if I drag and drop this red smoke over, we can slowly see this smoke following the path. So you can do some pretty exciting things with particles and following, like on the custom path. It's really cool that you can do something like that. Now, I will say, along with these objects that you can use, unfortunately with these particles and really all the objects that you have that you might want to use on the custom path, you are unfortunately unable to really affect these objects in any other way like you normally could or maybe would, but it just is what it is. You're stuck with these objects the way they are, and that's not the end of the world. But the fact that you can get them to follow this path is the really cool part. It also works the same with all these different humans and whatever. You could, you know, it's another object. It's the same thing, whether you're using a character or not, different animals, you know. This might begin to make a little more sense, but I sure still hope I wouldn't see something like this. It's funny because they're actually animated as well. And that's, you know, part of the advantage of this. Groups of people work just like before. It's all the same. It's all one object. Again, you can see all of these things work as the same. It works also with lights, which is really cool. It's hard to kind of see it here, but let me turn the sun to another time and we can get an idea of this light in action. There we can see the light is moving across the path, which is pretty cool. Spotlight, there it is. So all kinds of things that you can do with the path tool as far as adding objects. Pretty neat. And finally, if you remember from my vehicle path video, I was looking to actually add boats onto this lake, and unfortunately using the vehicle path tool, you're just limited to actual vehicles on the road, as you saw at the beginning of this video. But with the custom path tool, we're actually able to add a path with boats, that's awesome. All these different boats you have can function just like we saw this custom path. So I'm going to go ahead and make a separate path so we can put boats out onto this lake. And I actually need to get out of this specific path to do that, and go and create another one, path, custom path. Let's go ahead and draw here just some random places on the lake. You can have it finish, and this is something I probably even failed to mention in one of my previous path videos, but if you click the point that which you started as far as like adding the path, creating the path, it will actually close the loop for you. Now obviously I missed it there, but if we come over to this actual location of this last point, you could see it actually jumps and snaps to that finish, and we can see that my box is there. But maybe I don't want the box, like I said. Maybe we want a boat. So let's go to our user library. We've got our different boats here. How ridiculous do we want this to be? Let's just do a smaller sailboat. That works. So look at that. That's awesome. It's actually a great way of getting a boat onto the scene. And you know, with this scene having a boat that's moving, that looks pretty realistic. It looks pretty good. It's really cool that you can do something like that. Now, unfortunately, the path itself is only limited to one object, so you might want to just dump a bunch of boats onto the path. You're going to have to make another path for that. Now, we can always duplicate this by copying and then pasting, so we have essentially the same thing again. See, there's my second boat. So at this point now, what I do is, instead of this boat, I choose a different boat. Maybe we can choose this other sailboat. Maybe we can get a little more fancy with a yacht. That's a gigantic boat. There's a smaller boat. There we go. So yeah, we've got the two boats on the lake. That looks good. Let's go back to our first custom path here, and we'll start to look at some of these settings. Change the time back to where we can see things a little bit better. Now, if we're going to look at these settings, I have placed a red chair along this path so we could see it pop a little more compared to the context. So looking at my chair, that's my object is my chair. I can't change anything about that, unfortunately, but it's just the way it is. So animation, it's set to loop, and I have other options. I could just choose once if I just want this to complete once. If I want the chair to simply go from the start to the finish once, I have the option of using once then ping pong. So once it gets to the end, it will reverse and kind of boomerang back. I also can loop and just have it continuously loop, which is the default, or I can have it loop ping pong, so it simply goes back and forth and back and forth instead of actually going to start to end, start to end. So that works. Let's go ahead and put this on loop ping pong. And the speed, it's really nice. Just like the vehicles and just like all the other path tools, you have a speed that you can set, and from what I can tell, and in a virtual world, it looks like this is a pretty accurate speed. So 11 miles an hour. Now you can take this pretty high, so our chair can really get moving quickly, because again, all that makes sense. Obviously, we can put this up to 155 miles an hour. That's pretty crazy. I hope I would never see a chair moving at that speed, but nonetheless, you have that option, and it makes sense, I guess, if you're trying to a race car, a really quick boat, whatever. Probably not a quick boat, but a really fast car, or one of the planes. That's probably something you want to use that speed for. But you have the option of setting the custom speed. Now reverse, you might think that we know what this does, and it does make sense that reverse would do what we think it would do and actually reverse. But as you can tell, and as even I can tell, I'm not sure that this is doing anything, and I'm not sure exactly what's supposed to happen. If you know what this reverse is supposed to do, please leave that in the comments below. I'd love to know, because I sure don't know, actually. Even whenever every time I click it, it starts over, obviously, but I'm expecting something to reverse, whether it's the path or whatever, and it might be dependent on this specific animation type. I don't know, but regardless, I'm going to leave it off, and it's just the chair is doing its thing. We've got a delay, so like if you want the delay start to be a specific, number of seconds, so whenever I hit this reverse, it will actually start over. But we can see the delay as this chair comes to finish the path. It will actually delay this. In this case, it would delay 20 seconds before it begins again. So if you, for some reason, want this to stop and then for a certain point then start again, that's the delay. That's how that works. Then it will come back. The rotation, that's nice. It is as simple as it is. Because we have no settings that we can actually adjust for this object, everything that we do for this object and this path are within this path tool. So at this point now, I'll put the delay back down. The rotation will affect the rotation of the actual object. So as I rotate this around, we can see that my chair is, of course, rotating. I'm going to slow this down so we can see the chair. And yeah, so there we can see that the chair is turning and moving as I change the rotation. So for some reason, if you want the chair oriented a particular way during the custom path, that's how you would do that. Now this follow option it's pretty cool. It makes sense too. So I'm going to put the speed back up, and let's go ahead and start this animation over. And I want you to pay attention to the direction that the chair is facing. So by default, follow is on. And whenever I choose follow, we can see that the chair continues to, of course, follow the path, but the orientation of the chair also follows the path. So in a sense, the chair is rotating with the path rotating. Now I'm going to start this over with follow off, and you can see that the chair does not rotate with the path. It simply is sitting there in a static location, rotating. It's not rotating, and just following the path as a single object. And we can actually see this a little better with the boats, the most ridiculous boats. So let's choose this path with this boat, and as soon as I turn follow from on to off, we could see what happens. Now, this boat is continuously oriented to that one location, and like rotationally, but continues to follow the path. Now the reason we want follow on for something like a boat especially is that boats don't move sideways, they move forward in this particular way. They follow the path. Same with vehicles and whatever. So it doesn't matter so much for the chair because it's a chair and it doesn't quite make sense anyway. But if it were something that would follow a path, you'd probably want the follow option actually checked on, so you could see that this would technically follow the path even rotationally. Now physics is a bit interesting, so I'm going to move some of these points, actually these last few points, and I'm going to move them on top of this house and back over the top of the house. Like this, like that. Sure, that works. So what we're looking at now is physics. And you might think that physics is, having the chair just always be on the ground. And in a sense it is, but it's kind of hard to tell. So like right now, physics is on, and clearly you could see that the chair does not care about the path flying into the air. It only cares about following the path and being on, let's call it, a ground plane. Normally, this would not necessarily be the case if you have physics off. So, as we could see, when I turn physics off, the chair will perfectly follow the path, regardless of where the path is. I'm going to up the speed so we could see this chair a little more often. So this chair is boomeranging back, and as it gets to this point, it's going to fly up into the air and follow the path on top of the house, back down. Now with physics on, again, this chair will now continuously follow the path, but also try and find a ground plane. So the ground plane, when it comes to like comparing the path to like the actual ground when it's over the house, it's the chair or the path is thinking that the ground plane is essentially the top of the house, or like at some point in the center of the house compared to where the path is. So if I wanted this chair to actually fall on top of the roof, I'd need to refine this path a little more. But for the sake of this, you could see that the differences between the physics being on and physics being off. Physics on, it's going to attempt to find a ground plane, which just makes sense, and that's really nice. And we saw the same thing actually in the character path. That's basically an option that we're stuck with. There's no physics on or off for the characters because they're not floating. You can't have them float. But if you put a box in front of them, they will literally hop up onto the box and over the box as they get to the path. So this is the custom path, so we have a lot more different options to look at. So that will do it for the custom path. We have placed random chairs in our scene, had them float across our screen. We've added some boats on the lake, which look pretty good and pretty convincing, I will say. And we've gone through all the different settings that we have with this custom path tool. We've looked at even like copying and adding a second object, because we can only have one object on a single path. Just simply duplicating the path will allow you to have a second object on the same path, for the custom path, that is. So again, that will do it for custom path. If you have any questions, think this is weird or stupid or anything like that, please leave those in the comment section below. I'm definitely curious. And also, if you know what this reverse is supposed to do, let me know. If you did happen to learn something and you just liked the video, maybe demolish that like button. Also, please, if you wouldn't mind changing the phase of that subscribe button to existing, that also helps me out so much, and I thank all of you who have done that to this point. Definitely growing, and I definitely enjoy it. Happy to help as many people as I can. I'm looking forward to continuously doing that. I sure hope to see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching.